Welcome to Damn Good Movie Memories with your host, Brian Davis. This podcast is the cure for your long commute and super boring workday.
Damn that Madigan.
Madigan. Just call me Dan.
What the hell do you care about Dan Madigan?
Madigan, from the novel by Richard Dorrit. Richard Widmark is Madigan, detective lieutenant. Henry Fonda, police commissioner in the world's toughest city, New York. Inger Stevens, Julie Madigan, too lonely, too passionate. Co-starring Harry Guardino, James Whitmore, Susan Clark, Michael Dunn, Don Stroud. The story? The story is the city. 7-8 million people. Conflicts, tensions, sex drives, crimes.
Drop the gun, Rocky.
You're out of your mind, finished.
I said tell him to drop the gun!
Who keeps the lid on most of the time? That's the story, too. The department, the commissioner. At his level, power plays, corruption, policy. At the cops level, bullets.
I came here for justice, and I'm going to get it. But I don't want a policeman's idea of justice.
I think you're talking about revenge, not justice.
And finally, the story is Madigan. The whole towering structure jeopardized by one man, Madigan. His strength.
Now be a good boy and drink your milk.
His weaknesses.
After my wife, I love you best.
72 hours to correct his goof, to bring in the killer on the loose. And his private life tripping him up.
Why can't it be like it was before you got married?
Look, man, you guys got no right to do this. You got nothing to tell you. I got my rights. I want a lawyer. Hey, what'd you do that for? What did I do what for? You got no right to hit me like that. You got the law.
You mean I'm supposed to have separate rules for Charlie Kane? What? I don't even have them for myself.
What about you and me here in your bedroom? Is there a separate rule for us?
What the hell with these facts? Let's go.
Hey there, it's Brian Davis, and for this week's episode, we're going to cover the movie Madigan from 1968. The studio was Universal Pictures. The release date was March 29th, 1968. The running time, 101 minutes. So this is a film I discovered in the last 5 years after purchasing some similar genre films on DVD and then having recommendations from those purchases. I was initially intrigued with the film because of Henry Fonda and Richard Widmark, but I ended up liking how the film laid the groundwork for many edgy crime dramas of the 1970s. All right, let's get into the main cast. So, Richard Widmark plays Detective Dan Madigan. Now, Widmark was a veteran actor of 20 years at this point, with his career in film beginning in the late 1940s. He started playing villains, which eventually morphed into hero roles in war movies and westerns. His best-known films prior to Madigan included Kiss of Death, No Way Out with Sidney Poitier, Don't Bother to Knock with Marilyn Monroe, Pick Up on South Street, The Tunnel of Love with Doris Day, The Alamo with John Wayne, and Judgment at Nuremberg. Henry Fonda plays Commissioner Anthony Russell. Of course, Fonda at this point was already movie star royalty and one of the most revered actors of his generation. I've covered his early career in an episode for The Lady Eve with Barbara Stanwyck from 1941. His best-known films from 41 until 68 include The Oxbow Incident, My Darling Clementine, Daisy Kenyon, Fort Apache, Mr. Roberts, The Wrong Man, 12 Angry Men, Advice and Consent, The Longest Day, How the West Was Won, Failsafe, and In Harm's Way. You have a lot to catch up if you want to watch some great Henry Fonda movies. Inger Stevens plays Julia Madigan. Now, Stevens' career was finally starting to take off film-wise by 1968 after almost a decade of appearing on TV shows. Her best-known film would come the same year, starring with Clint Eastwood in Hang 'em High. But sadly, 2 years later, Stevens died of an apparent suicide from a drug overdose at the age of 35. The director, Don Siegel. Now, speaking of Clint Eastwood, I actually covered one of Siegel's films with Eastwood a while back for 1968's Coogan's Bluff. Siegel would continue to be an important director in the career and growth of Eastwood with Two Mules for Sister Sarah, The Beguiled, and the original Dirty Harry. All right, let's get into the making of the film. So it's actually based on the 1962 novel The Commissioner, written by Richard Doherty. Doherty was a former New York police deputy commissioner in the 1950s for community relations. Don Siegel often clashed with producer Frank Rosenberg, who would often meddle while Siegel was filming. This meddling involved unreasonable actor schedules made by Rosenberg. He would ask for various takes to be redone because they were not to his liking, and shoot locations that were picked by Rosenberg that didn't match the feel of the film, which was supposed to be in New York. Both of the main stars, Fonda and Widmark, agreed that Rosenberg was difficult. Fonda was originally attracted to the role because of the depth of the character. However, Fonda said because of Rosenberg, his character was watered down because of all the script rewrites done by Rosenberg. However, both Fonda and Widmark loved working with Don Siegel, and said the film turned out as well as it did only because of Siegel's talents. Widmark said Siegel was one of the best 3 directors he ever worked with, the other 2 being John Ford and Elia Kazan. All right, let's get into the movie. So it opens in Spanish Harlem in New York City. We meet 2 detectives, Dan Madigan, that's Richard Widmark, and his partner, Rocky Bonero, played by Harry Guardino. They're attempting to bust a criminal named Barney Benesh, played by Steve Inott, at his apartment.
This is where the police officer rings the bell and waits to get invited in, right?
All right, Barney. What the hell is this?
Take it easy, Banish.
Hell of a time in the morning for a social call, Dan. Now, don't complain, Barney. We could have been here half an hour ago. Put your pants on. We're taking you to Brooklyn.
Brooklyn?
Brooklyn.
I've been clean for 2 years. What do I know about Brooklyn?
Well, that's what they want to know. Come on, Banish, move it.
If I asked you for a warrant, you could show me one.
We left it downstairs with the doorman.
Watch out for my glasses.
No gun?
Gave them up.
What for, Lent?
Oh, you guys kill me. I never thought you two would try illegal entry.
Look who's talking. How old are you, honey?
I am 22.
22.
Banish, will you move it? I want to get home and see the kids before they go to school.
You always were a family man, Rocky.
That's right.
Rosita? My jacket. Not bad, eh, Danny boy? It's there for the asking.
Knock it off.
Drop the gun, Rocky.
You're out of your mind, Banish. This is a routine check.
Cut the crap, Madigan. Tell that wop cop it's now or never. I said tell her to drop the gun! All right, put your hands, you bastard. Get your hands up! I'm never going in again. Not with you, not with anybody. All right, turn. I said turn! Your hands on his shoulders, Danny boy. Get your hands on his shoulders.
Barney grabs Madigan's gun as the young woman hides behind a long mirror. Barney takes both detectives upstairs to the roof and locks them out. Madigan jumps another rooftop to an open door to race downstairs to try to catch Barney. The young woman opens the door to let Bonero loose. Madigan and Rocky end up losing Barney on foot. We're then introduced to New York Police Commissioner Anthony Russell, that's Henry Fonda. He plays a tape recording that could implicate one of his colleagues and friends on bribery charges. He then gets a call from Chief Inspector Charlie Kane, that's James Whitmore. We also meet Russell's younger girlfriend, Tricia, played by Susan Clark. We eventually discover that Tricia is married to someone else.
Yeah? Muller? Speaking. Oh, is this you?
Who the hell do you think it is? Now get this. I'll see you at the same place, only an hour later. Now got that? 1 hour later.
Look, will you be able to?
We'll both be there.
I'll be there. You can count on it.
We'll both be there. I'll meet your terms. And you'd better meet mine.
Don't worry about it. Pleasure to do business with... Hello? Hello? Yeah?
Muller?
Speaking. Oh, is this you?
Who the hell do you think it is? Now get this. I'll see you at the same place, only an hour later. Now got that? 1 hour later.
Yes?
Good morning, Commissioner.
Morning, Charlie.
Bad news this morning, Tony.
What do you mean, bad news?
And a couple of the boys up at the 23rd Precinct stepped all over their nightsticks a couple of minutes ago.
Some loser named Barney Benish lifted their guns and took off.
It's a hell of a thing. Who were the officers involved?
First grade detectives Daniel Madigan, Rocco Bonero.
Damn that Madigan. He was bound to get caught in a ringer sooner or later.
Oh, Madigan's a good cop, Tony. Doesn't always go by the book.
I like the book, Charlie. How did it happen?
I'll have the details for you from the chief of detectives by the time you get downtown.
Right.
Darling, what are you doing up so early?
I couldn't sleep.
Why, trouble?
All kinds.
Hello?
Tom, I'm sorry to cut into your sleep like this. Can you pick me up right away?
Yes, sir. I'll be right there, Commissioner.
Thank you.
Well, what is it? What's wrong? Can you tell me?
When I know.
Well, would I be invading your privacy too much if I asked you what you wanted for breakfast?
Just coffee and juice.
As for Madigan and Rocky, when they return to the station, they find out that Barney was wanted for homicide, which they were not aware of when they tried to pick him up. They thought it was a simple questioning, and now Barney is on the loose with both of their guns. The detectives are fined 5 days' pay for losing their guns. At his office, Commissioner Russell gets a visit from the assistant chief inspector. He heard the voice of the actual chief inspector, Charlie Kane, on the tape involving brides, which were to protect a hangout for prostitutes. It's now up to the commissioner to figure out what to do with this knowledge, as Charlie is a longtime friend of his. There's an interesting scene when another police officer demands that Madigan be reprimanded for his latest incident, as he's often lived on the edge as a cop. I wouldn't say Madigan's on the take or anything, but he doesn't turn down favors which are given to him either. In this meeting, the most ardent defender of Madigan is Charlie Kane. Knowing what Commissioner Russell knows about Charlie, this defense seems to be less than stellar. Also, the commissioner and Madigan came up together as cops, and Russell never liked Madigan's ways. On the flip side, Madigan always thought Russell was too by the book and uptight. You can kind of see where this is headed. It's an old movie trope, but it's still effective. While the commissioner also struggles with being in a relationship with a married woman, Madigan and his wife Julia, played by Inger Stevens, have their own issues.
Sometimes known as cold board. And so today, my dears, if you will follow my instructions just as faithfully, you will find these wonderful exotic
I really didn't think you'd show up.
patties and
Yep, I made it.
enchantingly simple to prepare.
You look beat.
And I know your hubby will be absolutely
Can I fix your drink?
delighted
Yeah,
that you
easy on
cared
the
enough
water.
about him to try something new.
I suppose you've had your lunch?
Well, I didn't know you didn't call.
It's okay.
There's still some cold cuts and potato salad.
That'll be fine. Oh, thanks.
Helen Barry phoned a little while ago.
Yeah? How is she?
She's okay. She called to tell me she heard about you over the radio. What a shame, she kept saying. Poor Dan. Did you catch him yet?
Nope.
Helen has her faults, but she's a good friend. I'd go crazy stuck out here without her.
I don't mind Helen. She's a bitch, but what the hell?
But who isn't? Was that what you wanted to say?
No. No, honey, no. What are you going to be doing tonight?
The usual. Watch TV. It's getting so it's coming out of my eyeballs. And those commercials, I know every one by heart.
Why don't you go to a movie?
By myself?
Why not?
You know I hate that. I'd rather watch TV. Well, that's why I've been looking forward so to the captain's party.
We'll go.
Do you want to eat now or after you shower?
After.
I think the real reason Helen called was to tell me they're buying a cottage at Breezy Point.
Have I got any clean socks? Oh, thanks.
I didn't say anything, but why would anybody want to buy a house in a place like that? I mean, it's so common. Cops and firemen, that's all you ever see at Breezy Point, as if you didn't see enough lousy cops as it is. Except you're one lousy cop I never see enough of.
Now, honey, don't start that again.
Well, why can't we be like other people? Look at my brother George. He and Marge have a great time together. He doesn't have to carry a gun whenever he steps out of the house.
Lucky old George.
Well, a lot you get out of it, a couple of $100 a week. George must be good for $30,000, $40,000 a year in that bar and grill of his. And he spends every afternoon with his wife.
Good for him.
Well, you could be a captain, too, not just a crummy detective running around the streets. Well, you are smarter than most of them, but that's not for you. Well, what do you care about the money or the respect? As long as you're out on those damn streets having fun. Well, what about me? Why don't you think of me once in a while? Maybe there's some kind of life I want.
Damn it, Julia. Why do you always have to go into that same song and dance? Hello.
Hey, Dan.
Yeah.
This guy Buster, Castiglione's friend, didn't he have a brother? Worked in a subway for the city.
Oh, yeah. Dispatcher. Midtown someplace. Check with the transit authority, will you?
You got it. I'll pick you up in 20 minutes, okay?
All right. I'll see you then.
I get your food.
Honey? I'm sorry. Oh, you don't have anything on under that, do you?
It's a little late for that now, isn't it?
Ha! Touché, Mrs. Madigan. Back to the commissioner, already dealing with the burden of potentially having to ruin the career of his friend and the supposed recklessness of Madigan, along with his own personal life with Tricia. Another problem arises as a well-known black minister named Dr. Taylor, played by Raymond St. Jacques, meets with the commissioner about his teenage son, who was subjected to police brutality when he was questioned a few days prior. Dr. Taylor's son had been arrested twice in the past for molestation of girls. Dr. Taylor believes his son was simply profiled due to his past. Dr. Taylor went straight to the commissioner because he has a mutual respect for him and hopes the officers accused of the brutality are properly punished. The commissioner orders Charlie to thoroughly investigate the officers held in question. Russell promises if the findings are negative for the police, he will not hesitate to take action against the officers. In the meantime, Madigan and Rocky meet with a bookie named Midget Castiglione, played by Michael Dunn. Yes, that's his name. Anyway, the Midge agrees to help with the information about capturing Barney. Madigan also juggles another woman on the side, though platonic in nature, named Jonesy, played by Shereen North, and she's a nightclub singer. In many ways, this film sort of plays out like a long TV episode of a detective show. And that's not a bad thing, but some may find the pacing too slow for their liking. But I actually like this, as you get more character development without a constant cops and robbers action story. Alright, there's about 40 minutes left and plenty of drama to play out, including if the detectives can apprehend Barney, along with the drama involving the police commissioner. I will say that the ending isn't predictable, and definitely a blueprint for the gritty crime dramas to come in the 70s. Alright, some fun facts. Richard Widmark did reprise his role as Dan Madigan in a TV series adaptation in 1972. However, it only lasted 6 episodes and was canceled. Don Siegel said in his biography that Inger Stevens felt very uncomfortable during the shooting because the producer, Frank Rosenberg, pushed her to rehearse a very difficult and poignant scene while also having to shoot wardrobe tests throughout the day. And as mentioned before, these were the impossible schedules that Siegel had conflict with Rosenberg about. Siegel was also opposed to calling the film Madigan, pointing out to the producer Rosenberg that its release would broadly coincide with the showing of unrelated films like Elvira Madigan and Madigan's Millions. What Siegel really wanted to call the film was Friday, Saturday, Sunday, but that was rejected. All right, one person that did not reject the proposal to watch this film was Lindsay. She had never seen it before, as I'm guessing most of you have never seen this before, but that's okay. That's why we do Damn Good Movie Memories, to introduce you to things that maybe you have missed or never even heard of. So why don't we talk to her now and get her opinion and fresh take on the film, and then I'll be back next week to talk about yet another random movie from my DVD collection. Okay, we're back with Lindsay. Welcome back, Lindsay.
Thanks for having me, Brian. Hi, everybody. Good to be here, as always.
So I'm not sure why I picked it. Well, you want to see older movies because you haven't seen them and you're starting to get more into them. And I gave you a list of 3. And you're like, yeah, this Madigan one sounds interesting because it's a police procedural. Why did you pick this one as opposed to, a screwball comedy or something like that?
Well, I've always been interested in modern day, like police procedural type dramas.
Modern of the 60s.
Yeah, no, well, for me, no, I'm talking about like during my life. I really, like my mom, I gotta give a shout out to my mom here, geeked out on the Law and Orders and, NYPD Blues and all those shows that used to be on, Stephen Bochco type shows.
Yeah.
And so I've always had an affinity for like the police procedural.
Except for Cop Rock.
Yeah. So I figured when you offered up the older films, which is what I have been more interested in as of late, because it's definitely something that escaped me. And I saw one happen to be a police procedural and was coming from the 60s. I thought, in late 60s at that.
Yeah.
I thought, well, this is a time that I don't really know anything about. And yeah, I'd be curious how they would do kind of like a gritty police movie from back then compared to what I'm more used to in, modern 80s, 90s, thousands. And so I think that's what drew me to it, like, of the list. It's what bubbled it to the top of the list of options that you had presented.
Well, it's funny, you watch this, and you almost think it's more of a TV episode than your typical Hollywood movie at the time, because it really kind of stays... It's not very glitzy and glamorous. I mean, obviously you have some of the cop detective tropes, but it really does feel more like a Law and Order episode than, let's say, watching Humphrey Bogart trying to catch something. There's less style, I would say.
Yeah, that's true. And the city, the way they shot the city, and it takes place in New York City, it looks gritty and rough. It gives that kind of like vibe. It's not glamorous or stylized in any way. The job looks hard.
Yeah.
And the job doesn't look glamorous.
No, not at all.
And nobody is sleeping well. Nobody is eating well. People are drinking, and it looks hard.
Yeah.
Like, it looks hard.
Well, I think this kind of ushered in the modern era of cop films. It was less, glitz and glam. And yeah, I just think that this is a good one that I don't think anyone has seen that it's my age.
I never heard of it.
Yeah, exactly.
No.
I was interested because I like the cast. So you have Richard Widmark, who plays Madigan. Henry Fonda is a legend. He plays the police commissioner. You also have James Whitmore, who's been in a number of films, including one that we're going to be talking about relatively soon. But he was also in Them, and he was a great character actor. And there's more people that we'll get into. So the main characters is Daniel Madigan. He's kind of a rough... He's almost an anti-hero in many ways, because I wouldn't call him a dirty cop, but he kind of lives on that edge. He certainly doesn't mind getting handouts.
He lives in the gray and the fringe, for sure.
Which is kind of neat in a way, because it's better when your characters aren't necessarily cut and dry.
He wasn't a great guy. He wasn't like a bad guy. Even his personal life, you see reflections in the way...
And we'll get into that.
That he treats... life at home, let's say. But yeah, he's definitely a questionable anti-hero type, for sure.
And he definitely cares, I think, more about his job than his personal life.
It's almost like he is unable to really decouple those things, and like he can't prioritize personal over professional. He's just wired to be that way, and it's almost like being a cop allows him to be that way, so it's a perfect excuse for him to say, well, this is just who I am, deal with it. Yeah. Because it's par for the course with the job. It's almost like, could a person of that character really have had any other job? Yeah. It's almost like, nope, he had to be that. And it is it is sort of the mask that he holds up so that he doesn't have to be anything else. That's right. Like, he's just a cop, and this is what he is, and take it or leave it.
Well, and then the yin and yang, and this actually pertains to our kind of careers too. When you stay true to yourself, and whether you like him or not, Madigan kind of stayed true to his self, but he never moved up. Where he was at the same time, so Henry Fonda's character, they kind of came up relatively together. And there's a line in there where Fonda was saying that I always wondered why he was eating better than I was, alluding to the fact that he was constantly getting handouts from shop owners because he was a cop. Whereas I think that Fonda's character decided to do things on the straight and narrow, and that's why he became the police commissioner. But he also probably knew how to play politics.
No, I think you're absolutely right about that. I remember that moment, and it implied for sure that the Madigan character was probably on the take early on. Like, how else was he going to be kind of showing up the way that he was and having the advantages he was if he wasn't doing that? So it's almost like the line that got established was the commissioner, Henry Fonda's character, was obviously able to move up and go far and kind of surpass him because he was living maybe on the right side of the law. Mm-hmm. And if Madigan was sort of in the fringes there and kind of, dancing with danger, so to speak, then it would make sense that he was just kind of comfortable where he was and really wasn't going anywhere. And that's probably what caused some kind of maybe rift between those former friends, former colleagues.
But I think this is an important movie. If you end up being a fan of movies like Coogan's Bluff, which is Clint Eastwood, also directed by Don Siegel, and then Dirty Harry, and then The French Connection, which was Gene Hackman as Popeye Doyle, you can see the kind of the formation, the impetus in Madigan, because that's when that anti-hero came. You all love Dirty Harry because he was willing to go the extra step, whether he was right or not, because he wanted to get the bad guy. Because if he went the right way, the bad guy was going to get away with it. In this case, it was actually his screw-up which caused this whole film.
Yeah, I guess I don't mind a world where Madigan does what Madigan has to do to get the bad guy. But yeah, he made a mistake. I guess maybe that is an interesting element of this film. He screwed up. Yeah. And that's how come we even have this movie in the first place. The plot is around a mistake that he, not even really his partner, but he made. Yeah. That sort of placed a service revolver of the police, registered to him in the hands of a criminal. Yeah. And now this dangerous criminal's run around the city with like a cop's gun. Yeah. Not a great look. And Madigan and his partner, desperate to try and recover that weapon and bring this person, to justice at the same time, knowing it's with a bad dude. Mm-hmm.
Well, I know your favorite character is.
You do?
Midget Castiglione.
I did like Midget Castiglione. Again, Midge. in another world, who knows how, the modern world. Yeah. But he was a cool character. He was actually a successful business person.
Well, he's a bookie.
in the underworld. Yeah. He's a successful business person in the underworld. Yeah. But, he skated the line how he had to. He knew he was, to be able to do what he needed to do, he
Were you
needed
make
to
a
be
short
a bit
joke?
of
He was under the radar.
No. To be able to do what he needed to do and operate his business, legitimate or not, the way he needed to. There are times he had to give the cops a thing or two, and they called in a chip here. Yeah. And he was on the hook for it. Mm-hmm. So he made good. He had good information. Yeah. He delivered. It was really kind of sad when they went to his office.
Oh, yeah.
And the way Madigan roughed up the secretary, that was a little bit like, whoa, yeah. Well, that's not good.
Even his partner said, oh, we're this is what we're doing now.
Yeah, even his partner was like, dude, this is pretty messed up. Yeah. So there are plenty of shades in here of Madigan doing things where you're like, yeah, okay, not so good. Not so good.
But it's not just Madigan. So they do get into the police commissioner. He, though he tries to do everything by the book, is confronted with a major issue with his best friend, who's played by James Whitmore, and the chief inspector. We won't get into the outcome of that, but the gist of it is there's a tape of him, basically taking graft from a known, I guess it's a mobster, basically. And so he has to decide what he wants to do. Plus, the police commissioner is also involved with a married woman. So
yeah,
so there's a lot going on here.
There's a lot going on here in terms of...
Which I thought was good to cover at this point.
I do too, because everyone has sort of the, the hero and the anti-hero in them. Everyone has shades of the darkness and the light. And that comes through pretty clearly with many of the characters. Like, they're not all bad, but they're not all good either. And there's a lot of complexity to the things in their life and the decisions they're making. So it takes at least 3 different characters and maybe even 4 if you count Madigan's wife.
Yeah.
And gives you shades of like, okay, like I see the good in this person, but also I see maybe the corrupt, but you can also relate to and maybe even understand what's causing the corruption and so there's so much relatability with real life in those characters. It's interesting.
It's also, I like that you need everyone to get the job done. You need the commissioner to be who he is to deal with the whole picture, the picture as a whole. He can't do what Madigan does, and obviously Madigan can't do what they do, but they could work in the same world if it's done correctly.
There has to be tolerance. Yeah.
But they're going to give each other headaches, both sides.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and they have to know what is acceptable and what isn't, and it's not going to be the clear procedural line of acceptable.
And the other interesting part where there's a key scene about police profiling and a prestigious black pastor. I guess he is in the black community. He's very important. Well, his son was profiled. The police profiled him because he had a past of they called molesting women. Now, whether he did this or not, this is still happening to this day. So,
well, and again, it's calling out important issues that we all need to be aware of. Which is surprising in
1968.
It is surprising for 1968, but I appreciate that they're raising that to the surface and they're giving a lot of credence to the idea that this is real.
Yeah.
This is and was happening, and it's not okay.
Yeah. So when you finally watched this, because you had a view of what this film was going to be like, was it what you thought it would be, or was it different?
I think it's hard to say. I think I expected it to be less complex. I don't think I thought that the characters would be so much of good and so much of bad. Like, in a very, I guess, kind of minimized way, I'm thinking of other more modern films where you've seen this happen. You've got this cop that's beloved by people, but's actually kind of a bad guy. And I can't believe that I'm going to flake on the name, but you will know it. It was Ethan Hawke and Denzel. Training Day.
Oh yeah.
So yeah. I'm glad I recovered that because I really think that's an amazing film. And Denzel won an Oscar for Training Day, which was a very well-deserved prize.
Yeah.
And it was a great example of he's kind of awful, but I kind of root for him too in a lot of scenarios in there. And
well, it's like The Sopranos. It's like Walter White. It's like all,
I didn't expect this to be that, but in a way, there were some moments where there's not same situations as like Training Day per se, but this idea that the people we entrust to do the dirtiest of work, how can we really know what it's like to be them and how they have to get that work done? If the end goal is that they're keeping the streets like a little bit safer and they're taking a little bit more of the bad away from the average people, like, I don't know. Do we question it? Do we not question it? There's plenty of reasons today in modern times why we do and should question it.
And what happens when you don't have that, you let the inmates run the asylum. Welcome to San Francisco.
So it's just a very interesting dichotomy of like, where is that line? And maybe the part of the point of the film is like it's not clear. Like it's not a clear line.
Yeah.
It's really gray. There's a lot of like when I think back to the Denzel's character, again, not this film, obviously I'm talking about another film, but a lot of people in the community feared, but I think if I'm recalling right, like respected him. Like he took care of business.
That's right.
He kept certain people, in the community, kept the community safe, but also he was doing some really unsavory stuff.
Absolutely.
I mean, really, he was
profiting off.
He was on the take.
Yeah, absolutely.
Not great, and don't think that that's a good thing, but just people who are in this line of work, I don't know what it's like. I don't come from a family of law enforcement in this way, but I would imagine that it's a difficult business. I think there's some things that are probably really necessary, and then there are some things that are probably really egregious, and this film kind of shows all that.
So we'll wrap up with this. This has nothing to do with the law enforcement, but it has to do with Madigan's character. So you were kind of horrified or always shocked when... So one of the key moments in this that we're leading up to, that Madigan's wife, played by Inger Stevens, was getting ready for... She was really excited to go to the ball, like the
Commissioner's ball.
The Commissioner's ball. And... he's still trying to crack the case, and he didn't really want to go, but he's kind of throwing her bones like, yeah, we're going to go. But he's not shamed at all by basically pawning her off on a single guy there.
Yeah. He basically gave her to a man. Not only did he give her over to a male colleague who was there by himself, he literally referred to her as a door prize. Yeah. I thought, oh my God, that's unconscionable. I can't believe. And this woman who's his wife and's been his wife for a long time and was excited to do this and already feels a little bit, on the outs with him because he's not around a lot and she's having to accept a lot of reasons that he's, working these crazy hours and not there and not available and kind of disappointing her on the regs. And he basically pawned his, wife off onto this guy, which has its own interesting storyline as well, which also gets into appropriate and not appropriate. And so, meanwhile, while there's no actual insinuation that Madigan is carrying on an affair with a nightclub singer, he's certainly spending the night at her house. Yeah. And
because it's better than sleeping on the police.
And she's really into him, and he's not egging it on, but not pushing her away. But you can tell it didn't get to a physical place in the...
But they were once together.
They were once a couple. Yeah. So there's so much shady in there. Yeah. It really is kind of a shady cast of characters. And then I feel bad for the wife in some respects because, she's sort of in her own moments of debauchery there and also trying to pull herself back from the brink, right? Because she's lonely, but she loves her husband. And I don't know if Madigan was a great guy. And I don't know. I'm sure there are great guys and great cops who are one and the same. I think he was maybe a great... Well, can you even say he was a great cop? He made a huge mistake.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I guess I don't know if I think he was a great guy. He wasn't a great guy.
I think this movie's important, not because it's the greatest film. I think it's a good film, but it kind of laid the foundation for great films that come, like the ones I mentioned. Dirty Harry, you mentioned Training Day. Without a doubt, the strongest anti-hero was Popeye Doyle in French Connection. I don't think he was a good guy at all. He was a very good cop, but not a good guy. Racist, not necessarily a great guy, but he got the job done for the New York City Police Department. So,
and I guess you could make an argument, though, if you looked at this, and I could see someone making this very clear argument, hands down. I mean, he made a mistake. Madigan? And then all the stuff and shenanigans that ensued around it, things he did that were despicable or not quite right. I mean, they're all in service of this mistake he made.
Yep.
So you can't argue, was this even a good cop to begin with?
Right.
Maybe this was just a flawed person and also a flawed professional. You didn't see the exact same behavior from his partner.
No.
His partner comes up very little in our discussion here and also in the film. He was kind of just like there.
Yeah. And you can tell he's kind of exasperated with Madigan.
Yeah. I don't think he's really supporting what he's doing either. So I don't know if you can say this was a good cop, bad man. This might be a bad man, bad cop.
Yeah.
He didn't do good cop things and he made a huge mistake, which is on him, that really set the wheels in motion for the film in general. And had he not made that mistake, so many other things wouldn't have happened, including the end, which I will not talk about because I made a mistake of spoiling another film recently and I will not do it again. I will not do it.
That one was a little more predictable than this one.
This one,
I would say, actually, were you surprised?
Yeah,
you were surprised by that.
I think this ending was interesting in that I didn't see it coming.
Yeah.
Not interesting in the way I usually say interesting, which means I don't know. No, it was not something I saw coming.
Got it.
Is it fitting?
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe it's fitting given the discussion we're having, but didn't necessarily see it coming. It's not the way I picture a lot of those types of films ending
on TV.
On TV, right? And in the procedurals that we've seen in TV in the past.
And we'll leave it at that. So check out Madigan. Thanks, Lindsay.
You're welcome. Enjoy, everybody.
If you enjoy this podcast and are an iTunes user, please do the show a favor and head on over to the official iTunes page for Damn Good Movie Memories. Be sure to leave a rating and a review. This will allow the show to appear higher in the algorithm and spread the joy of this podcast to the masses. If you are not an iTunes user, you can still listen and subscribe on Podbean at damngoodmoviememories.podbean.com. Be sure to like us on Facebook under our Damn Good Movie Memories page. You can also listen to a limited number of episodes on YouTube. I hope you enjoyed this week's episode and be sure to tune in next week for an all-new episode of Damn Good Movie Memories.